I guess let's start off with Nia and being the master of botches. This poor girl, from what I saw last week, almost killed Kyrie Zane with some sort of type of
Buckle bomb, whatever.
buckle bomb turnbuckle thing. Almost, decapitated the poor girl. And no, I that girl is just she's reckless right now. I have no issues with her. I like Nia Jax. I think she's great. She has the look. She's intimidating. She's Samoan, but I just feel like she's getting a little bit careless. All this I'm sorry, unless all they're trying to do is come up with they're making her be kind of like a badass because of all the stuff she said on Twitter about, Ronda Rousey, and like, you come to over here, bitch, I'll put you in your place. So they're probably positioning her to like make it look like you're like accidentally hurting people when you're really not. I mean, she almost hurt Kyrie Zane. This poor girl caught a concussion in November. If you guys remember the TLC match, which she's, that little chick is tough as nails, man, and I love Kyrie Zane. She hurt Becky. I believe I didn't see the Evolution pay-per-view, but I know she hurt Selena, right? She threw her like over the top rope, and Selena landed wrong or whatever. Her real life bestie, Alexa, I think she concussed her twice.
Right?
I think she hurt Bailey as well.
Yes,
if I'm not
Bayley
mistaken,
too.
probably hurt Charlotte too.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like the girl is like she really needs some type of lessons, I guess, like threaten, find, maybe work the match 2 or 3 times before they actually go in the ring. Now again, like I said, unless they're planning this on purpose to bring her back and put in a program with Ronda Rousey. I don't really know what's the situation. Lou.
Realistically, I don't necessarily think that I would call her reckless per se. I think that this comes down to a woman that is 6'1" and close to 300 pounds, working against women that are in the case of Kyrie Sane, probably go about 110 pounds. It's difficult because of the fact that when you're trying to work, that would definitely be the mark of a good worker if you weigh 300 pounds and you can work with somebody that weighs 100 and not hurt them. But at the same time, with the moveset that she uses, it's kind of hard not to. I don't necessarily know that she should be using any buckle bombs, particularly because that's a part of Seth Rollins' moveset, and it's such a huge part of his in-ring repertoire that if I'm a producer and I see any other wrestler doing it, I would tell them that's a no-no. That move belongs to Seth, and you shouldn't do it because it's not like a chin lock or a clothesline that everybody does. But in terms of really with Nia Jax and the way that she works, when I see her matches, I don't necessarily see her being reckless. I actually see her almost being a little too careful at times. And there could be moments that if WWE really gets it into her head about, hey, you got to work softer, it can almost get to the point where she's walking on eggshells and then the matches don't look good. There really is no woman in the WWE roster looking up or down. There's no one that could match her physically in terms of being able to have that sort of physicality that would kind of she could be a little more snug and not hurt anybody. So it's more of a matter of she can if it means that, hey, she can lighten up some of her stuff when it comes to some of the people that she's hurt, in the case of Selena Vega, when she threw and she landed wrong, it's a matter of like, hey, don't just toss her. You have to maybe like pick, like throw her up and, in the air. It looks, listen, it may look silly, but at the same time, it's a matter of protecting, somebody like Selena Vega, who is pretty much matches Kyrie Sane in the size department. So I don't necessarily think of it with her being reckless. I think that it might be a matter that there have been moments where she has been a little careless at times. Yes, I could say that. But if I, realistically, I don't think that she's reckless, because if that was the case, she wouldn't be working for WWE. That's just for real. If she's hurting everybody, WWE would eventually cut the cord with her, no matter the Samoan line and all that stuff. They would have probably cut bait with her long ago if that was the case.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think something's going on. I think she probably is. She probably holds a lot of weight, or being related to The Rock has her in everyone's good graces, because this right here with Kairi Sane, I don't think it was a buckle bomb. This was a regular power bomb, and she overthrew her. And if she underthrew her on a buckle bomb,
she was too far. I think
she was super far. Why would she go for a buckle bomb from across the ring?
I think her intent was to kind of like pick her up and like slam her on the floor, but then Kairi
It looked like she tried to do like a border toss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because she was in the same spot where Hernandez does his border toss almost.
Yeah.
And she overthrew her. Either way, whether she overthrew her on a regular border toss or if she underthrew her on a buckle bomb, that is insane. I've never seen something so bad. Except one other thing. The only thing I've seen that looked worse than that was when she punched Becky in the face. Which is one of the most blatant punches to the face with so much impact.
Yeah, but it worked.
Like,
it worked for the glory. That's what's crazy.
It got Becky over.
Yeah,
but I don't think anyone was happy about that.
Yeah, no. No, nobody.
So Julio listed off a bunch of names, and I think she's injured 10 people, something like that we know about, including a man. She injured R-Truth at the Rumble. So Bayley, Selena, Ember Moon, Charlotte, Becky, now Kairi. Now
Bayley, I think I don't know exactly with Bayley, but I know with Charlotte, she kind of like flipped her, and Charlotte kind of like landed wrong on her shoulder.
Now
something like that.
A lot of these girls are her friends, and so maybe everything is a mistake, but that doesn't mean she's not a bad worker. She must be a horrible worker to hurt this many people.
Well,
Big Show has never hurt this many people.
Yeah,
he's much bigger than that.
Like
300 pounds more than anybody else. Mark Henry can crush you literally for a shoot. Crush any man.
Yeah,
I'm
not calling her. I'm not saying that.
She's a bad worker.
Bad, then WWE shouldn't have her. I'm just saying like she's making too many mistakes.
Yeah, I think people.
That's just all I'm saying. I'm not saying she's making too many
guys
WWE wouldn't have her. That's not my argument. My argument here is just like be a little more careful. Like the agents talk to her. And,
well,
something's going on.
The thing is, in a situation like that, the agents are not going to really hold much water. This is going to come down to, somebody in the upper tier. That meaning someone who sits in the room with Vince, one of the decision makers, has to come down and say, okay, if this is becoming a situation where every single time Nia Jax gets in the ring with somebody, she's hurting them, and there isn't anything that we can do, if she, to send her down and, keep reseasoning her. This is where the start and stop stuff. I mean, with this particular reintroduction of Nia Jax, I'm thoroughly unimpressed for a couple of reasons. One is because there really isn't a change of look. And what I mean by that is, it's more of a matter like her costumes are still the same. Her hair is still the same. Everything about her is exactly the same as it was a year ago, the last time I saw her on TV. So there isn't anything there that wows me when she comes to the ring that's new, that I can say like, okay, she did something new. Now, again, they put in the ring with Kairi Sane, and it doesn't matter if she's in there with Kairi Sane or anybody else. The wrestler should not be getting hurt. So if this is a matter, that whole long string of wrestlers are getting hurt, and you can all kind of line them up and say, hey, they all worked with Nia Jax, and that's been a common theme, then yes, we can point to the fact that, hey, something's wrong here. And yes, guys like Big Show and Mark Henry, they can physically crush most human beings. So the fact that they get in the ring and seriously not hurt anybody they work with, that's a testament to them. And it might be a matter of, someone like a Nia Jax maybe needing some more training, needing some more seasoning, It's a matter that, unfortunately, in her spot, you can't really send her down anywhere else because there is no developmental for WWE anymore. Because NXT is no longer that. It's the third brand, you know, and the only thing that they could be able to do with her in other situations is maybe send her to Evolve or send her to one of the other, you know, indie promotions that WWE has a relationship with, if they truly wanted to season her up. And it might be, you know, and the thing is that there's a whole bunch of other things. I mean, you know, yeah, you got the lineage with the Samoan dynasty and The Rock and all that stuff, and that can hold some water too. There's a lot that you can say there for, you know, for Nia Jax in terms of her performance. If she's, you know, realistically, these are the types of things where if she's trying out new moves, this is a moment where if you're going to try a border toss, first of all, that's a move that requires, you know, it's a very intricate move, because the thing is the person taking the move is actually the one that's doing all the work. What you're essentially doing is that you're the base and you're kind of setting it up, but the person taking the move does all the work. And if you're 300 pounds and Kairi Sane weighs 110, you can't overthrow or underthrow. You got to do a perfect base and then let Kairi do what she's going to do on the way down. But, you know, if that's a move that gets botched, you know, a move like that gets botched, that could easily terminate Kairi Sane's career. If she falls the wrong way, break her neck, break her back, you know, like I said, she's a small woman, so it's like if she takes that bump the wrong way, you know, that could be the end for her, and that would be a shame because she's such a talented performer. So, you know, I'm not really in favor of wrestlers trying new moves on live TV without having tried it in some other environment. I'm sure that they have. It's just a matter that, you know, she may have just done it the wrong way. The thing is that with Nia Jax's level of experience, you can still say that she's green, but the thing is that she's not a rookie. You know, she's not a 2 or 3 year rookie. She's been on WWE TV now for 5 years, if not longer. You know, mistakes like that can't take place.
Great.
Yeah, I feel for her being, you know, because I think she's necessary as like something different compared to the rest of the locker room. I'm sure it's a challenge for her. Anytime she hurts someone, it's definitely gonna get overemphasized and blown up because her weight and size difference compared to the rest of the ladies is massive. And then because I'm sure plenty of guys get hurt working and it doesn't get as blown up as this would. But unfortunately for her, we have the video to see and as proof. I also feel for her coming off of double ACL. You know, maybe she was rushed back. It's been exactly a year. I'm recovering from one myself. I haven't done much. And it's been a year for me, so it's tough. Maybe, as to what Vic was saying, maybe she needs some time with the big shows, with the Mark Henrys, with the Braun Strowmans of the world who work with smaller guys every day. Yeah, she's in a tough spot because I think they need her, but she does need work, especially coming off of so much time off. It's unfortunate, especially I saw them back in the ring again after last week. I didn't know why they were there. Maybe just to mention the booking itself. I didn't know why they were wrestling again.
Because she just storyline. Kyrie, I believe she asked for a rematch or something like that because she wanted to prove herself after she lost in the first King of the Ring qualifying match or something like that. I think that was the reason why.
It was a
got
better
eliminated last week. Good match, yeah, but all right.
I just you know, and in turn, I feel bad for Kyrie. Like she's on a major losing streak.
Yep.
I mean, I understand they're putting more of the focus on Asuka, and well deserved, you know, and understandable. But I don't know if they're burying Kyrie or they're just Kyrie's probably at a point where, you know what, you guys, I'm willing to like do jobs for people because I might be on my way out. She could be leaving because remember she just got married and she's probably like, I need some time away, so I'm willing to do a couple of jobs put a couple of people over and just move on. My guessing that's what she's doing because she's on a major losing streak. I don't think she hasn't won a match since it's probably around like the Royal Rumble. But next one, the next is going to be about who saw the dark side of the ring. Dino Bravo. You? Me. Very interesting and very sad. I did not know, Lou, I don't know if you were aware, but before he got to WWF, he was a big star in Montreal. It was called I forgot what was the name of the federation. Do you remember?
International Wrestling.
International Wrestling. He was their top guy. He was I think he was a 7-time world champion there. They used to bring in guys from other territories. I think Andre worked there. Jacques, known as the Mountie. When they brought him into to WWE, Vince McMahon kind of did that. Like he sprinkled his look on him, and I didn't know he made him a blonde Italian. Which, if you think about it now, like there's no blonde Italians around in the world right now.
French Canadian.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, French Canadian. But he was a born Italian.
Yeah, his family's from Italian, but he's from Montreal.
Yeah, he's from Montreal. Correct. And like he had big success in WWE. He did all his things, but I think he felt there was a point towards the end of his career where WWE kind of like in the mid card, and he's like, I'm a main eventer, man. I should be working with guys like Savage and Hogan and whatnot. And he ended up leaving, and it just, it took a turn for the worse. There was one other thing I did not know about this. I did not know that they were considering having a match between him and Hogan, because Dino Bravo drew big in Montreal, and they felt like that match between the American Hulk Hogan and the Montreal guy Dino Bravo would have made big money. I don't know the Lou, do you know the their hometown arena in Montreal?
I want to say that it's probably the Molson Center, but I don't think.
Center? Oh, what it used to be called before.
Molson Center, I think, is what's in Montreal. Please don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it was called. I know that a match in 1985 between Dino Bravo and Hulk Hogan, and it was mentioned by one of the promoters during the show. They could have put it in Olympic Stadium. So just to give you an understanding, Olympic Stadium is the baseball stadium where the Montreal Expos used to play.
Yeah, how many people can you fit there? Like 40?
I know Olympic Stadium, I think, sat 55,000.
That's crazy.
But for wrestling, let's say that for wrestling, you're not going to get a full sellout. You tarp out like the bleacher seats on top. But let's just say you can get easily 30, 35, 40,000 people.
Yeah.
And for 1985, that would have been huge money.
Yeah. And what's crazy, like Dino kind of like fell in that category of guys that Hogan did not want to work with for either because that they're the legit tough guys, and Hogan was some way pissed them off, and then he would get his ass kicked, or they were more popular than him, and Vince McMahon and the WWE did not want to fuck with that I guess the machine of marketing that Hogan was. So but it's just crazy to think that they actually had that type of match in hand, because I would have never thought in 100 years. I was like, I thought Dino Bravo was just some other guy like who Vince McMahon just grabbed during his run. I did not know he was a top guy like Piper was, like Steamboat was, like Junkyard Dog was, like Andre was, like Snuka was. He was another big star. And it's just sad that he fell in that category, because this kind of reminds me of the situation with Jake Roberts. When they had that program with Jake Roberts, and then as soon as the fans started chatting for Jake, they said it ain't gonna fly. And then Jake became subsequently the guy who was getting, the bad guy ready for Hulk.
Well, I mean, the thing is that realistically, this whole story with Dino Bravo, I think that. And obviously they, you can't do it in a 45-minute can't do it in a 45-minute documentary only because of, time constraints. But realistically, the match between Hogan and Dino Bravo back in '85, this was part of the WWF expansion into Canada. Now, mind you, when Vince McMahon Jr. essentially took over the then WWF from his father and then turned it into the World Wrestling Federation, this is back in 1980, 1979, 1980. He took over and became, I guess, the owner, principal player of the WWF. Then in 1982, he basically bought out all the other players, the other part owners of the WWF. He bought them out, and then he brought, he basically bought the promotion and then turned it into.
He would take
the
all
WWF.
Yeah.
The expansion into Canada. These are obviously names that everybody knows. Everybody knows Jack Tunney, Stu Hart, and then you have Dino Bravo was part of the Montreal, but let's just call it the Rougeaus. Jacques Rougeau Sr., and then his kids, Dino Bravo, International Wrestling, all of that. So those were the three main players in Canada that were running. Of course, there were other smaller territories. Those were the three players. When the WWF wanted to make their inroads into Canada, they started with Toronto, and they bought the territory that Jack Tunney was running, and as part of the deal, they bought Tunney's territory, and then he became the figurehead president of the World Wrestling Federation for all those years.
In which he's never mentioned till this day.
That we always saw him on TV. He was the figurehead president of the WWF. With Stu Hart, when his territory, and Stampede started going down, they were competing against Vince. But then in the mid '80s, Stu basically, took the buyout from Vince McMahon. The only thing that he asked was, hey, can you, give work to my kids? Meaning that's Bret Hart, later on Owen. I think Neidhart was part of that package. I think Neidhart may have already been in the WWF at the time.
And the Bulldogs.
The Bulldogs, Bad News Allen, which we later knew as Bad News Brown. Yeah. All those guys wrestled.
That was it. I think that was it. Those were the top guys.
All those guys wrestled in Calgary, and they all ended up coming to the WWF. The thing was with Bravo was actually still in Montreal. Montreal, for some reason, in that portion of Canada, knowing that it's the French province in Canada, there seemed to be like a real big split and difference between the English-speaking part of Canada and the French-speaking part of Canada. So they were really making inroads, having a whole, they were very successful. But what ended up happening was that when the Rougeaus left, when Haku left, when Andre left,
about Ming,
they had all this talent coming in, and now with those mainstays gone, that flushed their promotion to the point where Dino was the only big star left. What ended up happening was that, Dino Bravo had to make a decision as to whether or not, he wanted to stay in Montreal and continue being a big star in essentially a promotion that was dying, or make the jump to the WWF. Once the Rougeaus left and went to work for Vince, probably it took about 8 months later, Bravo joined the World Wrestling Federation. Once he did, of course, Bravo was the babyface in Canada, but the thing is with Bravo is that it's difficult to make him the top star when you already had the established top star, which was Hulk Hogan. At the time, it was Hogan, and then everybody else was fighting for number two. Back in the mid '80s,
was like close.
That was just the way the lay of the land in the WWF. It's Hulk Hogan, and then there's everybody else. And Bravo came in. Obviously, they changed his look up and everything to make him more of a cartoon character. It's unfortunately for Bravo, he never really quite became like the top guy in the WWF, just because it was never, with all the players that were there. And Bravo was towards the end of his career anyway. I mean, Bravo, Dino Bravo was actually much, much older than he looked. I mean, at the time when he came to the WWF, he was in his mid-30s. He was in his mid-30s when he came to the WWF, where most other guys were probably 10 years younger than him. So, it's a difficult spot. And injuries started getting him. And, unfortunately, once his run was over with the WWF, that's money that you'll never make anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? Like, for most professional athletes in any sport, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're talking about pro wrestling now. But you know, even back then there was big money to be made, but even now more so. That's the reason why I always remember what Jesse Ventura would always say. It's not about how much you make, it's how much you save. So, you know, you got to be able to keep, you know, to hold on to your money, because that in pro wrestling, it's a very, or like in any professional sport, it's a short-lived career. And, you know, it's all a matter of being able to build a brand for yourself. I mean, guys are a lot smarter now in terms of utilizing all the resources that they have to create career paths for themselves well after their playing days or their wrestling days or whatever fighting days are over. You know, they can continue moving on. Pretty much with this documentary, didn't the only thing that came across as news to me was that, you know, he was related to to one of the heads of the Italian mob.
He was his, I think it was like an uncle by marriage or something like that.
Something, yeah. But that's
Like
the only thing that came across as news to me, because pretty much everything else I already knew. I mean, I knew that he was, you know, that he was murdered in his own home. He was shot. It was a mafia style killing, and you know, and he was only probably about a year or so removed. When I read the initial thing, this back in 1993, so I, you know, mind you, I'm like 12, 13 years old at the time, and I'm reading it in the papers. You know, that you know, and the fact that he was only about a year or so removed from leaving the WWF, and you know, he got into organized crime, and you know, unfortunately, man, there's a lot of those details get caught up. You know, I wish obviously they could have spoken. You know, really the only one wrestler that would have been able to add some real context to it, just because of the fact that he was very friendly with Bravo and knew about his forays outside, was Rick Martel.
Oh, Rick.
And Rick Martel did not. Rick Martel didn't. He declined to be interviewed, and even the French police, you know, they didn't really talk for this. So these are the kinds of things for Dark Side of the Ring that, you know, I know that those guys are working hard, man, and they do really good work. But sometimes when I watch these documentaries, they seem somewhat informative, but they seem incomplete. And you know, it's just one of those things that when you watch it, it's kind of like, you know, damn it, if they would have just said, you know, they would have been able to get this person. You know, if they refuse to do it, you know, they're doing their due diligence, but it just always seems like it's slightly incomplete. You know, even with the Snuka piece, even with the Benoit piece, it felt that way. So, you know, and there's no such thing as a perfect presentation. There's always going to be bits and pieces that are missing just based on time and, you know, people not wanting to participate. So, you know, you got to forgive them, take it with a grain of salt. But that piece didn't really present anything new. That, for the most part, I pretty much knew almost every piece of that story. So it's heartbreaking to see the family when you see the wife and the daughter, and you know, you see that and you see how it affects them in real life.
Even after all these years later,
that's powerful to watch, and sad to watch too. That's one of those things where it breaks my heart to see, you know, to see his wife and his daughter still seemingly not completely over it, and you know, and the thing is, they don't know who did it.
And I don't think they want to know either.
All these years later, they still don't know who the person or persons were that did this. So,
and they don't know whether it was either a drug deal gone wrong or the contraband of the illegal cigarettes. I think the detectives think that, like, you know, this was his first dealing, and it went so bad that I think he was already in debt in like what, $400,000, and I think the mob said, "Well, this is your first screw up. It's huge. You're dead." And they just or the mob probably found out, you know what?
More to it than that.
You're dealing drugs. We only want you to deal, you know, contraband cigarettes, which I think the FBI will look the other way probably, but supposedly he got into to kind of like a cocaine deal, and
it's
been bad, and I think the mafia found out, and you know, as they say in the mafia, who kills you is your best friend.
I mean,
the way he was executed, it was like, hey, it looked like he had like somebody in his house.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's
friend came over and he just shot him.
Yeah, all the details around it are, you know, the documentary. If you watch it, it goes into the details of all the stuff. Yeah, he was doing, working in the illegal cigarette trade, and then he was the guys who dabbled in the coke business were wanting to get into the cigarette business, and it was more of a screw up in communication, between the two parties, and the cops got their hands on a large loot worth $400,000, and I think that's where everything went wrong. That's where everything.
And that's when we went wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when that thing went south.
I believe his uncle was dead already by that time, if I'm not mistaken. So
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If they mentioned it, I didn't hear it. All that.
I believe his uncle died like in the early '80s, but like he was still more or less connected.
Yeah, certainly in that part of Canada. Oh, absolutely.